The next morning, he slides inside her, waking her up. "Good morning," he whispers. Emilie smiles and grabs her phone to check the time. "We need a debrief in 10 minutes. He slides his leg between hers and pushes deeper, making her moan. "I'll make it quick," he smirks. When they get to Coulson's office, the team is just starting to go over the events of the previous night. "Do we know anything about those clones that attacked us?" asks Quake. "No. Agents combed through as much of the rubble as they could, but there were no traces of them anywhere," says May. "We didn't leave empty-handed. We do still have DeMarcus and Grumpy in custody," reminds Coulson. "Now we play the waiting game. Hyde and Natasha are bound to show up again. In the meantime, Fitzsimmons has been working on a detox to help people being affected by the drug." "Speaking of, how are you feeling?" Quake asks Mac. "Good. The effects of the mist only lasted a few hours after we got back." "So, what now?" asks Emilie. "Now we get to do the really cool secret agent stuff," says Coulson, laying a stack of paper on the desk. Quake puts her hand on her forehead, feeling the oncoming headache. "Please tell me that we don't have to go through all of that. We didn't even have that much paperwork when we fought Gideon," she says. Coulson smiles and May looks at him with her arms crossed. "All right, fine," he says, pulling out a smaller stack and handing everyone individual packets. "You guys really need to lighten up." He hands one to Emilie and Robbie. "Just read over it. If you have any details you feel were left out or important to the events leading up to last night, just add them in to the bottom and sign." He pauses for a moment and then remembers to tell Emilie something. "By the way, there's something waiting for you in the vehicle storage." After they finish signing everything, Emilie goes to the storage to find what's left of her dad's car. The body was still intact, but the entire roof was crushed and the hood looked like it had been pried back. She lets out a deep sigh. "I could see you driving a convertible," says Robbie, walking over. "I feel like my dad is going to come down any minute and ground me," she says. "I guess we have a lot of work to do." Robbie raises his eyebrow and looks at her. "We?" "Yeah," says Emilie, smiling. "You know, I hotwired a car trying to rescue your ass." Whoa. Try saying that again." "I hotwired a car trying to rescue your ass," she repeats slowly. "The first part of that was impressive, but that last part definitely didn't happen," he laughs. "Keep telling yourself that," she says with a smirk. He walks over to look at the damage, and Mac walks in whistling at the sight of the car. "Damn," he says, crossing his arms. "I guess it's safe to say yours doesn't self-heal like his does." Robbie opens the door to his Charger. "You coming?" he asks Emilie. "Where y'all going?" asks Mac. "To start scavenging for parts," says Robbie. "I'd just settle for a whole new model," says Mac, shaking his head at the amount of damage that will need to be repaired. They drive around to a few junkyards looking for pieces to fix the Mustang. Robbie takes Emilie by the hand. "Okay, time to fess up. What has gotten into you?" asks Emilie. "You've been extremely lovey for the last few days, and I'm starting to wonder if you're suffering from some kind of PTSD. He laughs. "Or maybe I just really love you." Emilie stares, waiting for an answer. "I've come a long way as a person since we've been together. I didn't know what the hell I was doing asking for your number that night. I had so much going on in my life already. I didn't know it then, but I know it now. You're what I needed." "I needed you just as much," she says. They head back to HQ after finding a few parts for her car, but it will be a couple days before they will be ready for pickup. When they get back to HQ, the director is there speaking to Coulson. "Director, this is Emilie, our newest addition to the team," says Coulson. "You remember Robbie." "I remember the left hook," brings up the director. He and Robbie had gotten into a fist fight on their first meeting. "Pleasure to meet you, Emilie. Having two immortals on the team hardly seems like a fair fight, Coulson." "The opposition doesn't play fair," mentions Coulson. Mac walks over to Yo-Yo as she loads her bag into the SHIELD transport vehicle. Leaving so soon? He asks. Miami is calling my name. You still haven't come to visit me. We could catch some drinks on the beach, watch the sunset, she replies. It'll happen. I just been busy, he says. You're always busy. What, SHIELD doesn't offer vacation time? Next chance I get, he promises. Yo-Yo gets in the car and heads back to Miami. The next couple of weeks, the team gets to take it easy. They keep an eye out for any suspicious activity that may lead them to hide, but most of the missions that come through are uneventful. With the spare time, the team catches up on leisurely activities. Mac finally puts in vacation time to go see Yo-Yo. Fitzsimmons spend a little more time shopping for their new apartment. Quake and May train new recruits, and Coulson tests out a few new gadgets Fitz installed in his robotic hand. Emilie and Robbie manage to strip down her car and start replacing damaged pieces of the body. It only takes them about a week to get the body back in good condition. This is pretty fun, says Emilie, holding the light for Robbie. You're moving it again, he says, agitated. Sorry, she says, moving the light back in position for him to see under the engine. Okay, now I'm gonna need you to tighten that bolt right there. He points to a spot on the engine. Emilie starts to screw the bolt in the wrong direction, and the alternator swings loose and smashes Robbie's hand. He yells, and Emilie cringes. Sorry, she says, wincing. Robbie rolls out from under the car, cursing in Spanish. Mujer, te amo, pero te estás poniendo nervioso, he says to her while rubbing his hand. And what's that supposed to mean? Says Emilie, getting defensive. Robbie sighs. It means I love you. When it really meant, woman, I love you, but you're getting on my last nerve. Emilie crosses her arms and he kisses her. Can you please go grab me a Coke? He asks. She walks off to the kitchen and finds Quake taking a break from training. How are things going with the repairs? She asks. Let's see. We've been working on it for about 3 weeks, and I've only broken 2 of his fingers, so slightly better than it has been. Ouch, says Quake. Robbie props himself up against the car and takes a deep breath. The attitude is definitely from her mom, says Emilie's dad, popping up next to him. Sorry, didn't mean to scare you. Emilie's dad, Adrian, takes a step back and looks at the car. I put a lot of time into this baby right here, says Adrian, running his hand over the car. That's what Emilie said. Mind putting in a little more? Em isn't much of a mechanic, and I could use an extra pair of hands, says Robbie. Adrian rolls up the sleeves of his shirt. I wouldn't mind getting my hands on her again. The 2 men talk while they work on the car. Emilie is surprised to see the 2 when she gets back to the garage. Is this where you ground me? She says, handing Robbie the Coke and hugging her dad. She's yours now. Honestly, I don't know why you don't just upgrade. Some of the clearest memories I have of you and Mom were riding in that car. Emilie takes him on a tour of the facility. When they get to the lounge in the kitchen, her dad has a seat across from her. You've done real good, kiddo. Not that there was any doubt, considering who your dad is. He smiles. That Robbie kid ain't too bad either, all things considered. So he gets your approval, she jokes. Believe me, if he didn't, I would have smited him a long time ago. They get quiet for a moment. Ask. I know you've wanted to for a long time. Emilie's eyes start to water. Why? Why let me go through all I did and only show up in the last 2 years? The tears start to roll down her face. Could you not see what I went through? Why didn't you make it stop? He takes a seat next to Emilie and wraps his arms around her. You will never understand how much it pained me to watch you endure all you did. Do you know why you survived the night of the fire? Emilie shakes her head. What little power I had left after I married your mom, I transferred to you. I knew if I didn't, you would die. But I could have died from the power, too. It was a risk I had to take. Needless to say, the man upstairs didn't approve of my interfering with fate. And as punishment, I was banned from having any contact with you or seeing what the future held. Your mom used to visit you a lot in your dreams, but I couldn't even do that. Emilie wipes her eyes. And now? Now, I try to make up for lost time. I am always here when you need me. And your mom? Well, she's stuck on cloud 9, but she's always listening. And the two of us are always watching. Talk about invasion of privacy, she says jokingly with a smile. Keep your head up, kiddo, he says, rubbing her shoulders as he stands to his feet. I gotta go. I love you. Emilie blows him a kiss goodbye just before he disappears. Just who I was looking for, says Simmons, walking in. We just signed our lease. You got the apartment? Asks Emilie. We move in tomorrow. Friday we're planning on having a housewarming party, and I would love if you and Robbie would come. I know Robbie isn't much for social gatherings, but we'll be there, says Emilie with a smile. Emilie finds Robbie in her room later that afternoon, laying on the bed. You have your own sleeping quarters, you know, she says, sitting on his back. Go drool on your own pillows. He smiles, eyes still closed. I don't drool. I just foam at the mouth after kissing you, he jokes. Emilie zaps him in his side and he jumps. I'm joking, he says with a smile. Let's go get something to eat. I'm thinking Luigi's. Pizza again, he says. Okay, what about tacos? Nah, not really in the mood for tacos. Well, Mr. Picky, you choose. Robbie shrugs, half asleep again. I'm tired of fast food. So, not wings? She hints. Wings actually sound really good. Emilie gets off him, and the two ride out to grab wings. While they wait for their order, they sit outside on the patio of the bar they're at. So, what did you and my dad talk about? Pries Emilie. Not too much. Trying to size me up, I guess. Remind me of how precious you are to him. And tell me you could have easily taken me on in that race had you not hesitated. He laughs, and the waitress brings them their food. After they eat, they take a ride to Emilie's house. It doesn't even feel like a home anymore, she says, walking in. Robbie checks the mail, and Emilie grabs a couple of items before they leave. On their way back to HQ, they see a group of wheelchair-bound baseball players at the park having a game. Is that Gabe? Asks Robbie as he slows the car and sees Gabe playing shortstop. He takes a moment to watch the game and drives off once he sees Gabe notice him. On the ride back, Emilie notices Robbie looks bothered and takes his hand in hers. I wish I could be there to support him. So turn back, she suggests. No. Emilie looks at Robbie. She knew he wanted more than anything to turn around, but if Gabe wasn't ready to accept what he was, it would only do more damage. And no matter what Robbie said, Emilie couldn't help but feel like it was her fault. That Friday, everyone meets at Fitzsimmons' new apartment, except Mac, who was asked to stay in Miami a little longer and look into a few incidents that may require SHIELD attention. I'm so glad you two could make it. Come in, says Simmons, answering the door. I'll take that, she says, grabbing a case of beer and a bottle of alcohol from Robbie. Everyone was already starting to tap into drinks and snacks when they arrived. A few hours in, everyone is laughing and having a good time. Emilie walks over to the kitchen and has a look at the selection of alcohol and mixers. She grabs a couple and starts pouring. "You look like you know what you're doing there," says Quake. "While me and DeMarcus dated, I bartended at his club," she says, pouring 2 cups of the drink she just mixed and handing one to Quake. "Wow, that is really good." "Who's up for karaoke?" yells Simmons, bringing out a karaoke machine. "I think we should keep Gemma away from any more alcohol," says Fitz, walking into the kitchen. "What's that?" he asks Quake. She lets him have a sip. "Emilie made it." "I'll take one of those too if you don't mind," he asks. Emilie makes another one for Fitz, and Gemma starts off karaoke with Chumbawamba. "I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never gonna keep me down," she sings. "God help me for loving that woman," says Fitz. Emilie steps outside onto their balcony for a little air. Robbie joins her a few minutes later. "You okay?" he asks. "Yeah, I just needed some air," she says, turning towards him and resting her back against the railing. He takes a sip of his beer and rests his hands on either side of the rails around her. "What do you think about getting our own place?" she asks. "Like this?" he says, looking over the apartment. "Not necessarily, but someplace for us. My place is 2 hours away, and it's just not home," she says. "I'll sell it. Keep what's important, and we can start fresh. Together." "Sounds like a plan," he says, planting a kiss on her lips. They head back inside, and Emilie calls dibs on the next song. When it's her turn, she takes the mic from Gemma, who was on her 4th song of the night, and points to Robbie sitting on the couch. "This one's for you," she says. He lowers his head and blushes, nervously awaiting for her song choice. And then Mariah Carey, "Always Be My Baby," starts playing. Everyone gets loud and starts laughing as she unsteadily serenades Robbie. "Will you look at them?" says Coulson to May. "They're having a blast." "It's a party. They should be." "I know, but thinking back a few years, I never would have thought we'd see this level of camaraderie." "They're not comrades. They're family," she says. "You'll always be a part of me. I'm part of you indefinitely," she says as she climbs into Robbie's lap. His face blushes almost as bright as when he turns into the Ghost Rider. "Boy, don't you know you can't escape me." "Right now, I really, really wish I could," he says, laughing. After she finishes the song, she takes a bow and drops the mic like a boss before going back into the kitchen. "Looks like I'm next," says Coulson, walking over to pick out his song. Robbie sees Emilie pouring another drink and walks over to the kitchen. He reaches around her from behind and takes the glass from her before she can take another sip. "I think you've had enough," he says. Emilie pushes her hips back and grinds against him. He grabs her waist. "Behave," he says. "And if I don't?" she teases, her eyes getting heavy from the alcohol. "I think it's time we get you to bed," he says. "Well, I'm definitely not gonna behave there," she says, trying to kiss him. "I'm sure you'll be passed out by then," he says, trying to help her maintain her balance. "Well then, you have my permission to have your way with me." Her words start to slur and she smiles. "You should probably get her back," says Quake, walking over to see Robbie having a hard time controlling Emilie. "We're about to leave. Could you tell Fitzsimmons thanks for the invite?" he asks while picking up Emilie in his arms. "What happened to the music?" asks Emilie. Robbie looks up and Quake turns around. "What just happened?" asks Quake, looking at everyone. They were all frozen and everything was silent. "You think this is Emilie?" "I don't know. I've never seen her drunk. Maybe it's another power?" Robbie replies, still holding Emilie, who is passed out in his arms. Baby, wake up, he says, nudging her with his shoulder. Huh? She says dizzily. It's not her, says a voice from the far side of the room. It's me. Who are you? asks Quake. I'm Lorelei, and I'm here to bring order, she says. Lorelei holds up a rectangular glowing stone, and within a blink, everyone was transported out of the apartment. Robbie, Quake, and Emilie found themselves in separate glass rooms looking into a narrow corridor. Emilie, calls Robbie. She stumbles to her feet, still intoxicated, and he's relieved to see she's okay. The three of them see the rest of the team in one large room across from them. They look around confused. Where are we? asks Coulson. What happened? Some chick named Lorelei transported us here, replies Quake. Robbie punches the glass, but can't break it. Quake tries to use her powers, but the sonic pulse bounces off and knocks her back. Em, you think you could teleport out? asks Quake. Emilie props herself up and holds her head. I can try. She expands her wings, but nothing happens. That's not going to work, says Lorelei as she walks down the corridor. But it's entertaining. These chambers were built to contain beings like you. Was that a tesseract? asks Quake. This thing? Questions Lorelei as she pulls out the rectangular stone. No, but it has potential. This is the consummere. What do you want? asks Coulson. Absolute power, and all the suffering of your world will end. All I require is the power of your Inhumans. And if they refuse? Lorelei walks over to the glass and places her hand on it. A screen appears as she types something in. There is a sudden tremor in the facility, and the ceiling starts to lower in the room containing the team. This is definitely not good, says Simmons. Stop, yells Emilie, quickly sobering up. Lorelei turns her attention to Robbie, Emilie, and Quake. I require your powers. You either hand them over willingly, or I kill your team. The three of them look at each other, and then at the team as they scramble, trying to find a way to prevent themselves from being squished. We'll do it, says Quake. Daisy, no, says Coulson. Lorelei walks over to Quake, puts her hand on the glass, and a door appears. She steps in and holds out the stone. Quake hesitates for a moment before touching it. When she does, a blue aura forms around her hand and the stone, binding her to it until her powers have been drained. She drops down weak once she's released, and Lorelei moves on to Emilie. By this time, the ceiling in the room is almost to the team's head. Emilie places her hand on the stone and surrenders her powers. Lorelei walks over to Robbie's containment. The power I have isn't mine to give, he says. We'll see about that, she says, holding out the stone. Robbie reaches for it just as a flash of light brightens the corridor. Everyone looks as a woman appears and thrusts her sword into the glass where the chamber control was used. The ceiling stops 4 feet from the ground, and she places a device on the glass, creating a small door for the team to escape. Good to see you again, Sif, says Coulson. Lorelei, says Sif as she walks in her direction. Lorelei smiles just before teleporting out of the chamber. Sif walks over to the glass containing Robbie, Emilie, and Quake and unlocks the force field barrier of each one. What's going on? asks May. I'm in need of your help, says Sif. Lorelei escaped Asgard prison, and she has a stone known as the consummere. She's collecting as much power as she can in the cosmos to gain absolute power. Daisy, says May. Quake holds up her hand, but nothing happens. She shakes her head, and they turn to Emilie. She holds out her hand, and nothing happens. No sparks, no flames. But you still have your wings, says Fitz. I can't. They're just wings now, she says. I never touched the stone, He's still inside. I can feel him, says Robbie. So we're down 2 Inhumans, says Simmons. But we're up 1 Asgardian, says Coulson. Let's get out of here. We have a fugitive Asgardian warrior on the loose with a lot of power.